Grandma, listen. Someone slept in Grandpa's office last night. I saw the blankets moved. Look, right there. That's the bracelet. The man who came here yesterday had this exact bracelet.
My God.
Before sunrise, I walked downstairs alone and opened the door. A folded blanket lay on the sofa. A cup of tea was still warm. On Thomas' desk sat a photograph I had never seen my husband beside a frightened woman and a little girl wearing a silver leaf bracelet. It was the same bracelet Ethan had seen on the stranger leaving the room. Before I tell you what I discovered next, please like and subscribe. And tell me honestly, would you have called the police or searched the office first? Share where you're watching from and what time it is there. Sometimes knowing who is listening makes a difficult truth easier to tell. My name is Megan Morgan. I was 70 years old when my grandson whispered those words to me, and until that morning, I had believed the worst thing that could happen inside my home had already happened. 11 months earlier, I had lost my husband, Thomas. We had been married for 46 years. We lived in a quiet 2-story house outside Richmond, Virginia, on a street where neighbors waved from their porches and left packages by one another's doors. Thomas and I had expected to grow old there together. Instead, I learned how large a house could feel when only one person was grieving inside it. Thomas had been an estate attorney. He handled wills, trusts, and family disputes that often involved money secrets and resentment. He was respected because he never repeated what his clients told him. "People come to me when they are frightened," he once said. "They deserve to know their fear won't become gossip." That was Thomas. Calm, careful, private. Even with me, his home office had always been his territory. He never forbade me from entering, but I understood that the files inside belonged to people who trusted him. After his death, I locked the door and left everything as it was. His reading glasses remained beside the lamp. His legal pad still held a half-finished sentence. A navy blue sweater hung over the back of his chair. Sometimes I opened the door just to smell the cedar shelves and his old coffee. Other times, could not bear to walk past it. Thomas died on a wet mountain road west of Charlottesville. The police said his brakes failed as he rounded a curve. His car broke through a guardrail and rolled down an embankment. They called it a tragic accident. I signed papers. I selected a coffin. I thanked people for casseroles I never ate. I listened while strangers told me Thomas had lived a good life, but no one could explain why he had been driving on that road. He had told me he was meeting a client in Richmond. For months, that detail sat inside me like a small stone. I never spoke of it because grief had already taken all the strength I possessed. Then my daughter Lauren moved back home. Lauren was 42 and had been married to Ryan Parker for 16 years. She told me they were separating because the marriage had become unhealthy. That was the word she used. Not cruel, not dangerous, not abusive. Unhealthy. She brought 2 suitcases, 3 cardboard boxes, and my 8-year-old grandson, Ethan. I was relieved to have them close. The silence in the house had been crushing me, and Ethan's footsteps brought life back into rooms that had felt frozen since the funeral. Ryan remained polite whenever he called. He said he wanted to give Lauren space. He told me he respected her decision. Yet he called almost every evening, and Lauren always left the room to answer. I noticed it. I simply did not question it. That morning, after finding the blanket, the warm tea, and the photograph in Thomas' office, I led Ethan into the kitchen. The sky outside was still dark. I poured him a glass of milk and sat across from him. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw, I said. Don't add anything and don't leave anything out because you think I'll be frightened. Ethan nodded solemnly. I woke up because somebody walked past my door. A man or a woman? A woman. How could you tell she had long hair, but some of it was gray, and she wore a long, dark coat? He rubbed his thumb over the edge of the glass. She looked tired, Grandma. Like when Mom cries but says she's fine. That description unsettled me more than if he had called the woman frightening. Did she see you? I think so. What happened? She came out of Grandpa's office and looked toward your room. I thought she was going to knock on your door, but she stopped. Did she say anything? Ethan hesitated. She said Grandpa's name, to whom I don't know. Maybe on the phone. Maybe to herself. He looked down. She was crying. I showed him the photograph without pointing to the bracelet. Was this the woman Ethan studied the picture? I don't know. She looks younger there. Then he tapped the little girl beside Thomas. But she had that bracelet. My chest tightened. The bracelet was silver, with a tiny leaf-shaped charm. It was unusual enough that I did not believe Ethan could have invented it. At 7:00, Lauren came downstairs in a robe. She stopped when she saw the photograph on the kitchen table. Her face changed. Only for a second. But I saw it. What is that? She asked. I found it in your father's office. Lauren crossed the room too quickly. Why were you in there? Because someone slept there last night. She looked at Ethan. He shrank slightly in his chair. Ethan had a dream, she said. I didn't, he replied. Lauren forced a smile. Honey, dreams can feel real. The tea was still warm, I said. She turned to me. Maybe you left it there. I haven't made tea in that room since Thomas died. Lauren picked up the photograph. Her fingers trembled. Mom, you're upset. You probably moved things without remembering. I remember locking that door. Then keep it locked. Her voice was sharper than necessary. I studied my daughter carefully. Do you recognize anyone in that picture? No. The answer came too fast. What about the bracelet? Lauren placed the photograph face down. It's just jewelry. Ethan looked confused. I did not want him caught between us, so I told him to get dressed for school. When he left, I lowered my voice. You're not surprised. Of course I'm surprised. You're frightened. Lauren folded her arms. I'm worried about you. Dad's death has been hard, and now you're turning a child's nightmare into a break-in. There was a blanket on the sofa. Then call the police. The suggestion sounded like a challenge, not advice. Should I? Her eyes met mine. For one brief moment, I saw panic. Then she looked away. Do whatever you want. She carried Ethan's breakfast plate to the sink, though he had not finished eating. Her hand shook hard enough for the fork to rattle. After Lauren drove Ethan to school, I returned to the office. The lock showed no scratches. The frame was intact. My key still worked smoothly. I checked the window behind Thomas's desk. Years earlier, several coats of paint had sealed it shut. Thomas used to joke that it would take a crowbar and an act of Congress to open it. But that morning, the latch was lifted. Cold air moved through a narrow gap. I pushed the window wider and saw fresh scratches along the painted frame. Then I noticed something else. The dust on the outside sill was undisturbed. No handprint, no shoe mark, no sign that anyone had climbed through. Whoever opened that window had done it from inside the office, and that meant the mysterious woman had not broken into our house through it. Someone had let her in. The open window changed everything. Until that moment, I had tried to convince myself there might be a simple explanation. Perhaps the lock had not caught properly. Perhaps Ethan had mistaken a shadow for a person. Perhaps grief was making me see danger where none existed. But dust outside the window had not been touched. No one had climbed into that office. Someone inside my house had opened the window to make it look as though they had. I closed it carefully and turned the latch. Then I stood behind Thomas' desk and studied the room as if it belonged to a stranger. Thomas had always kept everything in order. His pens rested in a wooden tray. His client files stood upright by year. Even the corners of his legal pads lined up with the edge of his desk. That morning, the order was wrong. A blue folder had been pushed between two brown ones. 3 books on estate law leaned at an angle. One of the lower desk drawers sat slightly open. I pulled it toward me. It resisted. When I tugged harder, the drawer scraped against the frame with a sharp wooden groan. Fresh marks showed around the lock. Someone had forced it open and then tried to close it again. Inside were old appointment books, receipts, and several empty file folders. Empty. That bothered me more than finding something unfamiliar. Thomas never kept empty folders in a locked drawer. I lifted each one. The labels had been removed, leaving pale rectangles where names had once been written. At the bottom lay an old leather calendar. I remembered buying it for Thomas on our 40th anniversary. He had used it for only 1 year before switching to a digital schedule. I had assumed he threw it away. The calendar was open to a week in October, 25 years earlier. One date had been circled. Beside it, Thomas had written 2 words. Lake Anna. I looked again at the photograph from the desk. The cabin behind Thomas, the frightened woman, and the little girl stood near a body of water. Tall pines surrounded them. A narrow dock stretched behind the cabin. It could have been Lake Anna. I sat in Thomas's chair and held the photograph closer. He looked younger, perhaps, in his late 40s. His hair was still mostly black. He wore a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The woman beside him appeared to be in her 30s. She was thin with tired eyes and one hand resting protectively on the little girl's shoulder. Thomas was not touching her. That should have comforted me. It did not. They looked connected by something serious, something private. The little girl stood between them. She was about Ethan's age and wore the silver bracelet with the leaf charm. I turned the photograph over. The handwriting on the back was not Thomas. For the family you saved? I read the words several times. What family saved from what, and why had my husband never told me? My first thought was one I am not proud of. I wondered whether the little girl was his daughter. The idea arrived without permission and settled painfully in my chest. Thomas had traveled often during those years. He attended legal conferences, met clients in other counties, and sometimes stayed away overnight. I had never questioned him. Trust had been the foundation of our marriage. But trust can feel very different when one person is gone and the other is left holding a photograph that should not exist. I remembered a weekend when Lauren was 17. Thomas had said an elderly client needed urgent help near Fredericksburg. He returned Sunday night looking exhausted. When I asked what happened, he kissed my forehead and said, "A family needed a way out." At the time, I assumed he meant a difficult estate dispute. Now I heard those words differently. A family needed a way out. I placed the photograph on the desk and pressed my hands against my eyes. No, I whispered. Thomas had not been a liar. He had been cautious, but not cruel. He would never have built another life behind my back. That was what I told myself. Then another memory came. Years earlier, a woman had called our house late at night. When I answered, she said nothing. I heard breathing, then a child crying in the background. Thomas took the phone from me. He listened for several seconds and said, "You did the right thing. Stay where you are." Afterward, he told me it was a client emergency. I had forgotten that call until the photograph forced it back into my mind. The front door opened. I quickly slid the calendar beneath a stack of papers. Mom Lauren called. I carried the photograph into the hallway. She had returned from taking Ethan to school. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and her car keys were clenched in one hand. "I thought you were going grocery shopping," I said. I forgot my wallet. Her eyes dropped to the photograph. "You're still looking at that?" "Yes." She sighed. "I told you it doesn't mean anything. You don't know what it means. Neither do you." I held the picture toward her. Your father was standing beside a woman and a child at a cabin near Lake Anna. The message says he saved their family. Lauren barely looked. Dad helped people. That was his job. Then why was the photograph hidden in a locked office? Maybe it wasn't hidden. It appeared on his desk after someone spent the night there. Her mouth tightened. "You're making this bigger than it is. Do you recognize the woman? The girl?" "No. The bracelet." Lauren's gaze moved to the little silver charm. For 1 second, I saw recognition. Then, she handed the photograph back. "It's a leaf, Mom. Thousands of people wear jewelry like that." Ethan described it before I showed him the picture. "He's 8. He knows what he saw." Lauren walked into the kitchen and opened a cabinet, though her wallet was not there. "You need to stop involving him." "I didn't involve him. He came to me because he was frightened. He had a nightmare. There was warm tea in that room." "You keep saying that as if it proves a crime. It proves someone was there." Lauren turned around. "Then call the police." "You suggested that earlier, because I'm tired of this." "No, you're afraid of it." The words stopped her. Her expression hardened. "You think I'm hiding something? I think you knew that photograph existed? That's ridiculous. Then look at me and tell me you've never seen that bracelet." Lauren stared directly into my eyes. "I have never seen it." Her voice was steady, but her right hand moved behind her back. That was something she had done since childhood whenever she lied. I felt a sadness deeper than anger. "Your father has been dead for 11 months, I said. Whatever this is, I deserve the truth." Lauren's face softened for a moment. Then fear returned. "Some truths don't help anyone, Mom." Before I could answer, she grabbed her wallet from the entry table and left. I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to her car pull away. Her final words repeated in my mind. Some truths don't help anyone. That was not something an innocent person said. I returned to the office and examined the photograph again. This time, I used my phone to enlarge the faces. The woman's features were unfamiliar, but the little girl's bracelet was clear. A silver chain, a small leaf charm with a dark line through its center. Exactly as Ethan had described. Then I studied the girl's face. She had wide-set eyes, a narrow chin, and a faint scar above her left eyebrow. I imagined her 25 years older, gray beginning in her hair, a dark coat around her shoulders, tears on her face as she stepped out of Thomas' office. The mysterious woman had not merely known the child in the photograph. She was the child. And after 25 years, she had returned to my home, looking for something my husband had hidden. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the little girl in the photograph growing older, until she became the woman Ethan had seen walking out of Thomas's office. Who was she? Why had she come back after 25 years? And why did my daughter seem terrified every time I mentioned her? The next morning, I decided to stop guessing. Thomas had spent his entire career leaving careful records. If he had hidden the secret, he had also hidden a trail. I returned to his office, carrying a notebook, a flashlight, and a cup of coffee. This time, I whispered to myself, I'm going to think like Thomas. I began with the leather calendar. Instead of looking only at the week marked Lake Anna, I read every page from beginning to end. Most entries were ordinary. Client meetings, court appearances, doctor appointments, dinner with me, Lauren's college orientation, family birthdays. Then every few months, one name appeared. Rebecca B. Sometimes it was written in full, sometimes only 2 letters. RB. The meetings always happened outside Richmond, never at Thomas's office, never during normal business hours. Almost every entry included one more note. Private, no assistant, no file. That wasn't like Thomas. Even confidential clients had file numbers. Rebecca did not. I turned another page. Lake Anna, 6 months later. Rebecca B, another year. Lake Anna, Rebecca. The pattern continued for almost 20 years. Whatever connected Thomas and Rebecca had lasted a very long time. I opened one of Thomas's filing cabinets. Each drawer contained alphabetized client folders. Every name was there except one. No Bennett. No Rebecca. No RB. It was as if someone had erased her from Thomas's professional life while leaving faint traces behind. That was impossible. Thomas never destroyed records. He believed paper protected innocent people. I sat back in his chair. If you wanted someone to find the truth, I whispered, where would you leave it? My eyes wandered across the bookshelves. Most books dealt with estate law. One shelf contained family photographs, Lauren's graduation, our wedding, Ethan's first birthday. Nothing unusual. Then I noticed a framed certificate hanging slightly crooked. Thomas hated crooked frames. I lifted it from the wall. Nothing, but behind it, written in pencil directly on the drywall, were 2 letters. HC. I stared at them. Not initials. They looked like a reminder. Helen Collins. No, that wasn't right. Thomas's longtime legal assistant was Patricia Collins. Why would he write only HC? Then I remembered. Patricia's full name was Patricia Helen Collins. Almost no one called her Helen. Thomas sometimes did, only when they were discussing work. I smiled despite myself. You're still giving me puzzles. I carried the certificate back into the hallway and reached for my phone. My finger hovered over Patricia's number. Then I stopped. Thomas had spent decades teaching me one lesson. Never discuss sensitive matters over a phone if you don't know who is listening. Instead, I called Patricia's office. The receptionist answered. I'm looking for Patricia Collins. She's retired 6 months ago. My heart sank. Do you have a way to reach her? I'm sorry, ma'am. We aren't allowed to give out personal information. I thanked her and hung up. For several minutes, I simply sat there. Then another memory surfaced. Every Christmas, Patricia mailed us a handwritten card. I hurried upstairs and searched through an old box of holiday decorations. It took nearly half an hour before I found it. Inside was the latest Christmas card. At the bottom was Patricia's personal phone number. I dialed. She answered on the 3rd ring. This is Patricia. It's Megan Morgan. Silence, long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, she spoke. I was hoping you wouldn't have to call. A chill moved through me. You knew I might. I knew Thomas worried this day could come. My throat tightened. I found a photograph. Another silence. Then she asked quietly, Who else has seen it? My daughter. And my grandson. Patricia exhaled slowly. Megan? Has anyone else been inside Thomas's office? The question caught me off guard. I believe someone spent the night there. Her breathing became noticeably heavier. Listen carefully. I'm listening. Don't discuss this over the phone. What is Rebecca Bennett? She didn't answer. What is Bennett Trust? Again, silence. Finally, she said, How did you learn that name? So there is a Bennett. Megan. Her voice was firmer now. You need to stop asking questions over the telephone. Patricia, someone entered my house. I know. Those two words froze me. You know. I know enough to tell you this. She lowered her voice. Do not give Lauren any documents you find. My heart skipped. What? You heard me? Why would you say that? I can't explain over the phone. Does this involve my daughter? I cannot answer. Does it involve Ryan? Another pause. Do not discuss this with Ryan. My stomach tightened. She hadn't denied it. Patricia, am I in danger? She answered immediately. I don't believe you're the target. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they frightened me even more. If I'm not the target, I asked, who is? You need to meet me. When? Today? Where? Not my house. She gave me the name of a small diner 40 minutes outside Richmond. One I had never visited. We'll talk there. Before hanging up, she added one final sentence. Come alone. The call ended. I remained motionless for almost a minute. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Lauren. She had returned home earlier than expected. I quickly slid Thomas's calendar back into the drawer and closed the office door. Lauren walked into the kitchen carrying grocery bags. I thought you'd still be shopping, I said. So did I. She forced a smile. The store was crowded. She looked tired. No, not tired, distracted, as if she had been watching for something or someone. While she unpacked groceries, I watched quietly. She kept checking her phone, 3 times in less than 5 minutes. Finally, I asked, Everything okay? Fine. Ryan. She looked up sharply. No. You've been talking to him a lot. We're discussing Ethan. You always leave the room. So you never used to. Lauren shut the refrigerator harder than necessary. Mom? Not today. I'm meeting someone. Her head had turned instantly. Who? The speed of the question told me more than the question itself. A friend. What friend? I didn't know I needed permission. You don't. She looked away. I was just asking. I decided to test her. I found your father's old calendar. Every muscle in her shoulders stiffened. It mentioned someone named Rebecca. Lauren froze with a carton of milk still in her hand, only for a heartbeat. Then she placed it into the refrigerator. I've never heard that name. You answered before I finished the sentence. I told you. She closed the refrigerator door. I don't know her. I nodded as though I believed her, but I noticed something she didn't realize she had done. She reached unconsciously toward her necklace. She always touched it when she was frightened. She had done it during high school exams, at Thomas's funeral. And now, after she walked upstairs, I went back into the office one last time before leaving to meet Patricia. As I stood beside Thomas's desk, sunlight broke through the window. The light struck something metallic beneath the edge of the bottom drawer. I knelt and reached underneath. My fingers found a folded piece of paper taped to the underside. It had been hidden where no one would think to look. I peeled away the tape carefully. The paper contained only one handwritten sentence. If Lauren ever asks about the Bennett Trust, call Patricia before you answer. I stared at Thomas's handwriting. Then my eyes dropped to the date beneath it. The note was dated 3 weeks after the day he died. I read Thomas's note at least 20 times before I folded it and slipped it into my purse. The handwriting was unquestionably his. The date was impossible. For several minutes, I stood alone in his office, trying to convince myself I had misunderstood. I hadn't. If Lauren ever asks about the Bennett Trust, call Patricia before you answer. Thomas hadn't written "if anyone asks." He had written Lauren's name. That meant he had expected our daughter to search for the trust. My hands trembled. Not because I believed Lauren had hurt her father. Not yet. But because Thomas had anticipated something involving her long before he died. I locked the office, left the house without telling Lauren where I was going, and drove toward the diner Patricia had chosen. It was nearly 40 miles outside Richmond, sitting beside an old highway that most drivers ignored after the interstate opened years ago. There were only 3 cars in the parking lot. Patricia was already inside. She occupied a booth in the back corner where no one could easily overhear us. She looked older than I remembered. Her silver hair was shorter and deep lines framed her eyes, but she still carried herself with the calm confidence that had impressed every client who walked into Thomas's office. When she saw me, she didn't smile. Instead, she asked quietly, "Did anyone follow you?" I glanced toward the window. "I don't think so." "You checked?" "I looked in my mirror several times." She nodded. "Good." I slid into the booth. Without saying a word, I placed Thomas's note on the table. Patricia looked at it. She closed her eyes. "I was afraid you'd find that." "So it's real?" "Yes." "The date?" She sighed. "Thomas wrote several letters before he died and asked me to mail some of them later." I felt a wave of relief. "So he planned it?" "Yes." "He knew he might not be here." Patricia stirred her untouched coffee. "He believed there was a chance." Those words settled heavily between us. I leaned forward. "Tell me about Rebecca Bennett." Patricia looked around the diner before answering. "Rebecca wasn't just a client." I waited. "She was a survivor." Patricia spoke slowly, choosing every word with care. 26 years ago, Rebecca came into Thomas's office carrying a little girl. "Natalie." Patricia nodded. "The little girl from the photograph." "They had almost nothing." She lowered her voice. "Rebecca's husband controlled every dollar she earned. He monitored her phone calls, isolated her from friends, and beat her whenever she tried to leave." I felt my stomach twist. He threatened to kill her if she ever took their daughter. So Thomas helped them. He did much more than that. Patricia folded her hands. He found emergency housing. He arranged new financial accounts. He worked with a judge willing to seal court records. He coordinated with shelters across 2 states. I looked at the photograph again. "So he really saved them?" "Yes." The tears gathering in my eyes surprised me. Not because I doubted Thomas anymore, because I had doubted him at all. I thought... Patricia finished my sentence. "You thought he had another family." I nodded slowly. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Megan, Thomas loved you more than anyone I've ever known. He never told me. He couldn't. Why? Because Rebecca's husband had money, influence, and friends everywhere? Patricia leaned closer. If anyone discovered where Rebecca was hiding, she and Natalie could have been killed. I stared at her. So I was never supposed to know. You weren't. The truth hurt, not because Thomas had kept a secret, because I finally understood why he had. I wiped my eyes. Who was Rebecca's husband? Patricia hesitated. Then she answered, Richard Whitmore. The name sounded familiar. Too familiar. Whitmore Development. The same. My heartbeat quickened. The real estate company? Yes. I sat back in silence. Ryan worked for Whitmore Development. Suddenly, dozens of small memories began fitting together. Ryan praising his company's founder. Thomas changing the subject every time Whitmore appeared on television. An argument between Thomas and Ryan during Thanksgiving 2 years earlier. At the time, I thought they disagreed about business. Now I wasn't so sure. Patricia continued. Rebecca copied financial documents before she escaped. What kind of documents? Evidence. Of what? Fraud? She opened a folder she had brought with her. Inside were photocopies, bank transfers, property deeds, wire records, names, numbers. Most meant nothing to me. Patricia tapped one page. Whitmore Development targeted elderly homeowners. My chest tightened. They pressured people into selling below market value. She turned another page. They created shell companies. Another. They transferred money through fake consulting contracts. Another. They threatened anyone who tried to expose them. I looked at the stack. And Thomas kept all this. He kept certified copies. Why? In case Rebecca ever disappeared. The room suddenly felt colder. You mean if someone killed her? Patricia didn't answer. She didn't need to. I swallowed hard. Where does Bennett Trust fit into this? She closed the folder. Thomas created a protected trust. For Rebecca and Natalie. Money? Partly. What else? The evidence. I stared at her. The trust doesn't just hold assets. No, it holds proof. Exactly. Patricia explained that Thomas had designed the trust differently from ordinary trusts. No single person could access everything. Multiple safeguards existed. Multiple legal triggers. Multiple identities had to match. If someone tried to steal it, she said, they'd leave a record. I remembered the note. If Lauren ever asks, Thomas believed someone might pressure her. You mean Ryan? Patricia looked away. I can't accuse someone without evidence. But you suspect him. I suspected someone close enough to the family to learn the trust existed. I sat quietly. One question still bothered me. If all this has been hidden for 25 years? Yes. Why now? Patricia inhaled deeply. Rebecca died 2 months ago. I closed my eyes. So Natalie came back? Yes. Looking for the trust? Yes. And someone else learned she was coming. Patricia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her purse. She handed me another document. It was a report from the trust administrator. Across the top were the words, Unauthorized Access Attempt. Date. 3 weeks earlier. Requested identity Megan Morgan. I frowned. What is this? Someone attempted to access Bennett Trust using your identity. I never. I know. They used my name. They used your social security number. My driver's license, a scanned copy. My signature, A forged version. I felt suddenly sick. Someone had stolen my identity, not to empty my bank account, to reach Thomas's trust. I looked up. Did they succeed? No. Why not? They answered one security question incorrectly. What question? Patricia smiled sadly. They were asked where Thomas proposed to you? I almost laughed. No one knows that. Exactly. It wasn't where everyone thinks. You've never told anyone. Thomas had proposed beside an abandoned lighthouse during a storm on the Oregon coast. Even Lauren believed it happened at a restaurant in Richmond because that was the story we always told. Patricia folded the report. The person trying to impersonate you knew almost everything. But not everything. No. I stared at the forged signature. Only one thought filled my mind. Who had access to copies of my identification? Then another memory surfaced. Lauren had borrowed my driver's license a month earlier while helping me complete paperwork for Medicare. She had taken it upstairs to make photocopies. I had never questioned why it took nearly 20 minutes. A terrible possibility settled over me. Patricia. Yes. I think someone inside my own family helped them. I drove home with one thought repeating in my head. Someone had copied my driver's license. Someone had forged my signature. Someone had tried to unlock the Bennett Trust using my identity. The more I thought about it, the fewer people had access to those documents, and every answer brought me closer to my own family. When I pulled into the driveway, Lauren's car was already there. She was standing in the backyard, watching Ethan kick a soccer ball against the fence. From a distance, she looked like any ordinary mother. She laughed when Ethan missed the ball. She clapped when he scored an imaginary goal. If I hadn't known everything Patricia had told me, I might have believed our family was simply healing after a difficult year. Instead, I wondered whether every smile hid another lie. I stayed in my car for another minute. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed facts. That evening, after Ethan had gone upstairs to shower, I sat alone in the kitchen with a stack of bank statements. Thomas had always balanced our finances carefully. After his death, I continued paying bills the same way. I trusted Lauren enough to let her buy groceries using my debit card whenever she needed. At least, I thought I had. The first few withdrawals looked ordinary. $200, $180, $95, utilities, groceries, gasoline. Then the pattern changed. $3,000, another $2,000, then $1,500. Each withdrawal carried a short description. Household expenses, medical costs, emergency repairs. But I couldn't remember any emergency repairs. I opened another folder containing receipts. Most were missing. The total amount withdrawn over 6 months exceeded $28,000. I stared at the number. My pension wasn't large. Thomas had left us comfortable, not wealthy. $28,000 wasn't an accounting mistake. Someone had taken it. I heard footsteps behind me. Lauren entered carrying folded laundry. What are you doing? Organizing paperwork. She glanced at the statements. I've been meaning to help you with those. I noticed. Her smile faded. What does that mean? I've been looking at our bank account. She placed the laundry basket on the counter. Oh. You've made several large withdrawals. They were for bills. What bills? She hesitated. The house. We haven't spent $28,000 on this house. She folded her arms. I'll explain later. When I've had a stressful day? So have I. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan came downstairs carrying his backpack. Mom, can Dad still come Friday? Lauren looked startled. What? You said maybe Dad could visit Friday night. She forced a smile. We'll talk about it later. Ethan frowned. But he already came last week. Silence. I slowly turned toward Lauren. He came here. Lauren's face lost all color. Ethan, you told me not to tell Grandma. The words hung in the room. Ethan immediately realized something was wrong. His small face filled with confusion. I thought. Lauren interrupted him. Go finish your homework. But now. He quietly walked upstairs. I waited until I heard his bedroom door close. Then I looked at my daughter. You told me you hadn't seen Ryan in weeks. She rubbed both temples. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. He just wanted to see Ethan. Inside my house. I didn't want you to worry. I laughed softly. That's becoming your favorite excuse. Lauren lowered her eyes. Mom, how many times? I don't know. Try. Maybe 4. 4 times. She nodded. He came through the back door. Another nod. What did he do here? He talked to Ethan. Only Ethan. She didn't answer. My heart sank. What else? He wanted some old papers. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. What papers? I don't know. Don't lie. I'm not. Did he go into Thomas's office? Lauren looked away. That was answer enough. I left the kitchen before I said something I couldn't take back. Instead, I walked outside. The evening air was cool. I stood beside Thomas's old rose garden, trying to slow my breathing. Ryan had been inside the office. Multiple times, without my knowledge. I suddenly remembered something. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, had installed security cameras after several mailboxes on our street were vandalized. One camera faced our driveway. Another captured part of the sidewalk leading toward the backyard. The next morning, after Lauren drove Ethan to school, I walked across the street. Mrs. Henderson welcomed me inside immediately. Megan, are you all right? I need a favor. She listened carefully as I explained that someone might have entered my property without permission. I think my cameras still have the recordings? She opened her laptop. About what date? The night Ethan saw the woman. We searched through several files. Then we found it. The timestamp read 11:43 p.m. A dark SUV stopped half a block away instead of directly in front of my house. A woman stepped out. Even through the grainy footage, I recognized the long coat Ethan had described. She walked cautiously toward the backyard. She never approached the front door. She clearly knew exactly where she was going. I leaned closer to the screen. Wait. Mrs. Henderson paused the video. The back door opened before the woman even reached it. Someone had been waiting for her. The porch light stayed off. A figure stood in the doorway. The woman walked directly inside without hesitation. Mrs. Henderson zoomed in. The image wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. I recognized my daughter's sweater. Lauren had opened the door. She hadn't been surprised. She hadn't been frightened. She had been expecting the woman. My hands became cold. Mrs. Henderson looked at me. Do you know her? I swallowed. Yes. The visitor. I shook my head. The person who let her in. She reached across the table. Megan? I couldn't speak. The video continued. 37 minutes later, another vehicle approached. This one stopped even farther away. A man got out. He walked toward the backyard. Before he reached the house, Lauren opened the back door again. He entered without knocking. Ryan. He stayed inside for almost an hour. Then he left, carrying what looked like a leather briefcase. The mysterious woman never came back outside. Mrs. Henderson frowned. Did she stay all night? I think she did. My voice barely sounded like my own. On the drive home, I replayed the footage over and over in my mind. Lauren had lied. Ryan had lied. Neither of them had told me about the woman. Neither had mentioned entering Thomas's office. Neither had explained the missing money. Every answer uncovered two new questions. When I parked in my driveway, I noticed Ethan sitting alone on the porch steps. He smiled when he saw me. "Grandma." "Yes, sweetheart." "I forgot to tell you something." "What is it?" "The night Dad came, my heartbeat quickened." He told Mom Grandpa kept something really important in his office. I knelt beside him. "What exactly did he say?" Ethan thought for a moment. "He said if they found it first, everything would finally be okay." I stared at the front door. No, Ryan hadn't come to visit his son. He had come looking for whatever Thomas had hidden, and Lauren had been helping him. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the security footage. Lauren opening the back door. The mysterious woman walking inside without hesitation. Ryan arriving later and leaving with a briefcase. There was no longer any room for denial. My daughter had been hiding something. The only question left was how much. The next morning, I waited until Ethan left for school. Lauren was making coffee when I walked into the kitchen carrying my tablet. She looked up and smiled nervously. "Morning." I didn't answer. Instead, I placed the tablet on the table and pressed play. The security footage filled the screen. Lauren watched herself walk toward the back door. She didn't say a word. The recording continued until the woman entered the house. Then Ryan appeared. Lauren closed her eyes. "I can explain." "Good," I replied quietly. "Because this is the first time you've told me the truth in weeks." She sank into a chair. "I didn't want this to happen." "What exactly didn't you want? You finding out?" I sat across from her. "No more lies." She nodded. "No more." For almost a minute, she simply cried. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "The woman's name is Natalie?" I already suspected as much. "Natalie Bennett." Lauren stared at me. "You know, I know enough." She wiped her face. "She contacted me 3 months ago." "No." I shook my head. "You contacted her?" Lauren looked shocked. "How?" "Because she wouldn't have known where to find you." She lowered her head. "You're right." She admitted that after sorting through some of Thomas's old belongings, she had discovered a partial letter mentioning Rebecca Bennett. Ryan had seen the letter before she could hide it. He asked who Rebecca was. "What did you tell him?" I said I didn't know. "And?" He started asking questions. She explained that Ryan searched the internet, old legal records and public databases. Eventually, he discovered Rebecca Bennett had disappeared decades earlier. "He became obsessed," Lauren said. "Why?" "He believed Dad had hidden something valuable." "What?" "I didn't know." Lauren looked genuinely exhausted. "Ryan kept saying your father had protected millions of dollars." I almost laughed. "Thomas wasn't hiding money." "I know that now." "What did Ryan think?" "He believed the Bennett Trust controlled hidden assets." She rubbed both hands together. "He said if we found the documents first, we could finally start over." I remembered Ethan repeating almost those exact words. If we found it first. Ryan had been feeding the same story to everyone. What happened next? I found an old address connected to Rebecca. And Natalie? It eventually led to her, Lauren admitted she had written Natalie a letter. Natalie answered 2 weeks later. She didn't trust Lauren. Not at first. But after several conversations, Natalie agreed to meet. She thought I wanted to help. Weren't you trying to? Lauren hesitated. I wanted to. But Ryan kept asking what she knew. My voice became colder. So you told him. I told him almost nothing. You told him enough. Lauren began crying again. He kept saying Whitmore would destroy us if we didn't cooperate. My attention sharpened. Whitmore. She nodded. Ryan worked directly under people connected to Richard Whitmore. I remembered Patricia's warning. Go nowhere near Ryan. He said Whitmore knew Dad had hidden important legal documents. What kind? I didn't know. What did Ryan tell you? He said they were just business records. Lauren looked ashamed. He told me Dad had made a mistake years ago. I leaned forward. And you believed him. I wanted to. Silence settled between us. Finally, I asked the question that mattered most. What happened the night Natalie came here? Lauren covered her face. I invited her. Why? She wanted to search Dad's office. For what? The trust papers. So, you opened the door? Yes. She searched? Yes. Did she find anything? A few old files. Only a few. Lauren nodded. She said something important was missing. I remembered the forced drawer, the empty folders. Someone had searched before Natalie. Then Lauren continued. While Natalie was upstairs, she stopped. Go on. My phone rang. Ryan? Yes. He said he was outside. You didn't expect him? No. What did you do? I panicked. She buried her face in her hands. I locked Natalie inside the office. I stared at her. You what? I didn't know what else to do. So she spent the night there. Lauren nodded. Ryan stayed almost an hour. What was he doing? He searched the office. My pulse quickened. Did he find anything? No. Did he know Natalie was upstairs? I don't think so. That explained why Ethan had seen a frightened woman leaving the office before dawn. She had been hiding all night. I asked quietly, Did Natalie know you locked her in? Lauren nodded. She begged me to let her out. You ignored her. I was terrified. There was something in Lauren's expression that reminded me painfully of Rebecca's story. Fear, not innocence. Fear. Still, fear didn't erase responsibility. What happened after Ryan left? I unlocked the office. Then, she was exhausted. Did she leave? No. Why? She said someone might still be watching the house. Lauren swallowed hard. So she slept on Grandpa's sofa until morning. Everything Ethan had described was true. Every single word. I wanted to believe the worst was over. Then another thought struck me. What happened to the files Natalie found? Lauren froze. She didn't answer. My stomach tightened. What did you do? What did you do? I photographed them. The words barely escaped her lips. My heart sank. You sent them to Ryan. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes. Every page. Yes. Why? He told me Whitmore needed proof before leaving us alone. I stood so suddenly. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. You betrayed the only person your father spent 25 years protecting. I know. You betrayed Thomas. I know. You betrayed Natalie. I know. You betrayed me. Lauren couldn't even lift her head. I know. I walked toward the window because I couldn't bear to look at her. After a long silence, I asked one final question. Did Natalie know? No. You never told her. I couldn't. I turned around. Then I'll tell her. Lauren's face turned white. Mom, please. No. She'll never trust me again. She shouldn't. She began sobbing. I only wanted to protect Ethan. I looked at my daughter for a very long time. Then I spoke as calmly as I could. Being afraid explains your choices. It doesn't excuse them. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. As my hand touched the knob, Lauren whispered, Mom? I stopped. There was one more thing. I looked back. Ryan didn't tell me to photograph the papers. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I did it before he asked. I left the house without telling Lauren where I was going. She called 3 times before I reached the highway. I ignored every call. The 4th time, she left a voicemail. Mom, please don't meet Natalie without me. I deleted it without listening again. Some conversations no longer belonged to Lauren. Patricia had arranged the meeting at a small church fellowship hall outside Fredericksburg. It wasn't a church service day, and only a few volunteers were arranging donated clothing in another room. It was quiet. Safe. Or at least as safe as anything felt anymore. Patricia was already waiting. She wasn't alone. A woman stood near one of the windows with her back toward us. She wore a dark coat, despite the warm afternoon. Gray streaks ran through her brown hair. When she turned around, I immediately recognized her. Not because I had ever met her before, because I had already seen her twice. Once in Thomas's photograph. Once through Ethan's frightened description. The silver bracelet rested against her wrist. The tiny leaf charm caught the sunlight. She looked at me carefully. You must be Megan. Her voice was soft, tired, older than her years. And you're Natalie. She nodded. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she surprised me. I'm sorry. I frowned. For what? For entering your home. You frightened my grandson. I know. Tears filled her eyes. I never wanted that. I believed her. Unlike Ryan, she wasn't trying to control the conversation. She looked like someone who had carried fear for decades. We sat together at a folding table, while Patricia quietly walked to the other side of the room, giving us privacy. Natalie folded her hands. My mother talked about Thomas until the day she died. I felt my throat tighten. Rebecca passed away 2 months ago. I'm sorry. So am I. She looked toward the church windows. She spent 25 years waiting for the day she could stop looking over her shoulder. And she never got it. Natalie slowly shook her head. Even after all those years, she never slept beside an open window. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked, Why did you come back? She reached into her purse and removed a small envelope. My mother gave me this before she died. Inside was the short handwritten note. Thomas's handwriting. My heart skipped. I'd recognize that writing anywhere. Natalie nodded. He gave it to my mother a few weeks before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Before the accident. I unfolded the paper. Rebecca, if anything happens to me before this is over, Megan will do the right thing. trust her. Not because she knows everything, because she never stopped searching for the truth. Thomas. My vision blurred. Even after all these months, Thomas still knew exactly what to say. Natalie waited while I composed myself. Then she continued. My mother told me the original evidence wasn't just important. It was dangerous. Dangerous enough to kill four? I looked at her. She believed someone murdered Thomas. My mother never believed his death was an accident. Neither had I. Not completely, Natalie continued. She wanted to come herself. But she was sick. Natalie nodded. Before she died, she made me promise I'd find the trust. And that's why you came to my house? Yes. She explained that Lauren had contacted her first. At first, Natalie refused to respond. Then Lauren claimed she wanted to protect Thomas's legacy. My mother believed her. And you, I wanted to. She smiled sadly. I wanted to believe someone from Thomas's family cared about finishing what he started. I lowered my eyes. I'm sorry. You don't owe me an apology. My daughter does. Natalie looked uncomfortable. I don't think Lauren is evil. The statement surprised me. You don't know? What makes you say that? Fear. She answered without hesitation. I've spent my whole life recognizing fear. Those words stayed with me. My mother had that same look whenever my father threatened us. I remembered Patricia describing Rebecca. The bruises, the isolation, the constant terror. Natalie continued quietly. The night I came to your house. She looked toward the floor. Lauren kept checking the windows. She said someone might be watching. Was someone? I think so. She explained everything from her perspective. Lauren had unlocked the back door exactly as planned. She led Natalie upstairs. They searched Thomas's office together. Most drawers contained ordinary legal files. Others were already empty. They'd been searched before. By Ryan. I think so. Natalie discovered only a handful of older documents. Nothing that looked like the original trust records. Then Lauren suddenly received a phone call. Her face changed instantly. She whispered. Natalie paused. He's here. Ryan? Yes. Lauren panicked. She pushed Natalie into the office, locked the door, told her not to make a sound. I thought she'd come back in a few minutes. But she didn't. Natalie smiled weakly. I spent almost the whole night sitting on Thomas's sofa. I remembered Ethan describing the folded blanket. The tea? I made it. You knew where everything was? My mother showed me years ago. I nodded. She trusted Thomas. Completely. Natalie's expression darkened. She always said Thomas was the only lawyer who treated us like people instead of a case. We sat quietly. Then I asked the question I had dreaded. Did you know Lauren photographed the documents? Natalie frowned. What? The papers you found. I don't understand. She took pictures. Natalie's face slowly lost all color. While you were searching? No. She stared at me. No, she wouldn't. I reached into my purse and handed her copies of the text messages Patricia had recovered from Lauren's phone. Natalie read them silently, then lowered the pages. I trusted her. I know. I believed she wanted to help. I know. For the second time that day, neither of us spoke. Eventually, Natalie reached into another pocket. I almost forgot. She removed a tiny digital recorder. My mother told me never to lose this. She pressed play. Static filled the room. Then, Thomas's voice. Older, calm, exactly as I remembered. If you're listening to this, my breathing stopped. It means events unfolded faster than I expected. Natalie closed her eyes. Thomas continued. Richard Whitmore has learned someone close to me has been manipulated. My heart pounded. I don't know how much time remains. He paused. But if anything happens to me... Another pause. Don't assume it was an accident. The recording ended. The silence afterward felt louder than his voice. I couldn't move. For almost a year, I had tried to convince myself grief was making me suspicious. Thomas had just confirmed my worst fear. He knew someone was coming after him. And he believed the danger had already reached his own family. For nearly a full minute after the recording ended, neither Natalie nor I spoke. Thomas's voice still echoed in my mind. Don't assume it was an accident. I had lived with that question for almost a year. Now my husband had answered it himself. Someone wanted him dead. Natalie finally reached over and stopped the recorder. My mother listened to that message hundreds of times. I understand why. She wanted to go to the police. Why didn't she? Natalie looked exhausted. She didn't know who she could trust. That answer sounded painfully familiar. Neither did I. Patricia walked back to our table. She could tell from my face that I had heard the recording. You know now? I know enough. No, she corrected quietly. You know just enough to be in danger. Those words stayed with me all the way home. That evening, after Lauren and Ethan had gone to bed, I sat alone in Thomas's office. For the first time since his funeral, I played one of his old voicemail messages. Not because I needed comfort, because I needed to hear the way he thought. Thomas had never acted emotionally. If he believed his brakes had been tampered with, he would have left clues. He always left clues. I opened every drawer again, every notebook, every envelope. Nothing. Then my eyes landed on an old leather key holder hanging beside the bookshelf. It contained spare keys from cars we no longer owned, including Thomas's SUV. I stared at it for several seconds. Then a memory returned. 2 days before Thomas died, Ryan had borrowed his SUV. He claimed his own vehicle was being repaired. At the time, I hadn't thought twice about it. Thomas had handed him the keys without hesitation. After all, Ryan was family, or so we believed. The next morning, I called Natalie. I need your help. I'm on my way. An hour later, we were driving toward a small town west of Charlottesville. According to the accident report, the vehicle inspection had been performed by a retired mechanic named Samuel Reed. Patricia had managed to locate his address. The drive lasted almost 2 hours. Neither Natalie nor I spoke much. Both of us were thinking about Thomas. About Rebecca. About how many lives had already been destroyed by Richard Whitmore. Samuel Reed lived alone in a weathered farmhouse surrounded by old pickup trucks. He answered the door carrying a toolbox. He looked almost 80. What can I do for you? My name is Megan Morgan. His expression changed immediately. I don't talk to reporters. We're not reporters. I don't talk about that accident. You haven't even heard my question. I know why you're here. He started closing the door. I stopped it gently. Please. My husband deserved better than silence. Samuel looked away. I'm sorry for your loss. So, tell me the truth. He shook his head. I already did. No. You signed a report. I know. You called brake failure ordinary wear. It was. I reached into my purse. Without saying anything, I pressed play on Thomas's recording. If anything happens to me, Samuel froze. Don't assume it was an accident. When the recording ended, the old mechanic looked as though every year of his life had suddenly become heavier. He stepped aside. You'd better come in. His kitchen smelled of motor oil and coffee. Nobody spoke until he poured 3 cups. Finally, he sat down. I've regretted this every day. What happened? I asked. Samuel stared at the table. When the SUV arrived after the crash, he swallowed. I found damage that didn't make sense. What kind? The brake line. He drew an invisible line across the table with one finger. It looked clean. Clean. As if it had been cut. Natalie's breathing became audible. So someone sabotaged it. I believe so. Then why didn't you report it? Samuel laughed bitterly. I tried. He explained that before he finalized his inspection report, 2 well-dressed men visited the garage. Neither introduced himself. Both knew details about Samuel's family. One casually mentioned where Samuel's son worked. The other explained how easily people could lose their jobs. They offered money. Samuel looked ashamed. I refused. What happened then? They came back. His voice grew quieter. They weren't offering anymore. I didn't need him to explain. They threatened you. He nodded. They said accidents happen. Silence filled the room. Finally I asked, so you changed the report? I did. He looked directly at me. It was the greatest mistake of my life. I believed him. His regret wasn't rehearsed. It was the kind that settled into a person's face forever. There was something else, he said. What? The SUV came to my garage before the accident? My heart began pounding. Who brought it? He frowned. I remember because she seemed nervous. Yes. I almost stopped breathing. Who? He stood, walked to an old filing cabinet and removed a faded invoice. The paper had yellowed with age. Near the bottom was a signature. Lauren Parker. I closed my eyes. No. Samuel nodded slowly. She delivered the vehicle. Natalie looked at me. Neither of us spoke. I forced myself to continue. Did Ryan come with her? No. Did she say why the vehicle needed service? Samuel looked at the invoice. She said her husband asked her to bring it. My husband? No. He pointed at the handwritten note. Her husband. Ryan. So, Lauren didn't ask for brake work? No. Only a routine inspection. My breathing finally slowed. Lauren had delivered the vehicle, but she hadn't requested anything suspicious. Still, she had unknowingly placed Thomas's SUV exactly where someone could reach it. Samuel continued. A few hours later, another man arrived. Who? I'd never seen him before. What did he want? He claimed the customer had forgotten something inside the SUV. Samuel looked ashamed again. I let him into the service bay. You left him alone? For about 10 minutes. Everything suddenly made sense. 10 minutes. More than enough time. Can you identify him? I never learned his name. Would you recognize him? Samuel nodded. I think so. I reached into my purse. Patricia had given me several photographs before I left. business executives from Whitmore Development. I spread them across the table. Samuel studied each face carefully. Then his finger stopped. Richard Whitmore. No. Samuel shook his head. Not him. He pointed to another photograph. A younger man. Dark hair, expensive suit, corporate smile. This one. I looked closer. The name printed beneath the photograph read, Vice President of Operations. Whitmore Development. I folded the photograph carefully. Another piece had fallen into place, but Samuel wasn't finished. Mrs. Morgan? Yes. There's one thing I've never told anyone. What? He looked directly into my eyes. 2 days after your husband's funeral. Someone came looking for every photograph I took of that SUV. I didn't tell Lauren where I had been. I didn't tell her about Samuel Reed. I didn't tell her that someone had tried to erase every trace of Thomas's damaged SUV. For the first time since this nightmare began, I kept the truth to myself. Not because I wanted revenge, because I no longer knew who I could trust. When I returned home that evening, the house was unusually quiet. Lauren sat alone at the kitchen table. She hadn't turned on the lights. Only the fading sunset illuminated the room. I've been waiting, she said. I know. You didn't answer your phone. I wasn't ready. She looked as though she hadn't slept. Neither had I. I need to tell you everything. I remained standing. Then start. Lauren took a deep breath. The day Dad died. Her voice cracked. I thought I had killed him. The words hung between us. What do you mean? She covered her face. I drove his SUV to a repair shop. I know. Her head lifted. You know, I met the mechanic. The color drained from her face. He told you? He told me you brought the SUV in. Lauren nodded slowly. I thought Ryan was helping Dad. What exactly did Ryan tell you? He said your husband mentioned the brakes felt soft. I listened without interrupting. He said he knew a mechanic who could inspect the vehicle quickly. So you volunteered? Yes. You didn't think to tell your father? Lauren shook her head. Ryan said he wanted it to be a surprise. I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly like Ryan. Always pleasant, always reasonable, always one step ahead. Lauren continued. I dropped off the SUV before work. What happened after that? The mechanic said everything looked normal. Then I picked it up. Did anyone else touch it? I don't know. She began crying again. I didn't stay there. I thought about Samuel's testimony. Lauren had left. A man from Whitmore Development had arrived afterward. She truly might never have known. When Dad crashed, she struggled to continue. Ryan told me accidents happen. I waited. He said I couldn't blame myself. But later, she swallowed. He started saying something different. What? He reminded me that my name was on the repair order. My chest tightened. He said if anyone investigated, she couldn't finish. They'd think I arranged everything. There it was. Control, fear, guilt. Ryan hadn't simply lied to Lauren. He had trapped her. What did he want in return? Information. About Thomas? She nodded. He kept asking whether Dad ever mentioned a trust. The Bennett Trust. Lauren looked at me with wide eyes. You know its name? I know much more than that. She lowered her head. I didn't. I believe you. She looked surprised. You do? I believe you didn't know what the trust really contained. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I honestly thought it was money. I sat across from her for the first time that evening. I also believe you made terrible choices. I know. You stole from me. I know. You lied to me. I know. You helped Ryan search your father's office. She whispered, I know. I reached across the table and gently pushed a box of tissues toward her. I can understand fear. She looked up hopefully. But fear doesn't erase responsibility. The hope disappeared from her face. I deserve that. Yes. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, Lauren said something I hadn't expected. I'll tell the police everything. I studied her carefully. Will you? Yes. Even if it means losing Ryan forever? She laughed bitterly. I lost Ryan a long time ago. I wasn't sure she realized how true that statement was. Then she reached into her purse. I kept something. She handed me an old receipt. It was from the repair shop, folded several times. I couldn't throw it away. I examined it. The date matched Samuel's records. Ryan's handwriting appeared at the bottom beside one sentence. Take it to Reed's garage, not Thomas's handwriting. Ryan's, another piece of the puzzle. Why keep this? Because every time I looked at it, she wiped another tear away. I remembered Dad. I believed her. For the first time in weeks, I believed almost everything she said. Not because she had earned my trust back, because broken people eventually grow too tired to keep lying. Then Lauren looked toward the stairs. Ethan. What about him? Ryan keeps asking to see him. Has he threatened you? She nodded. He says if I stop cooperating? My stomach tightened. He'll tell Ethan I helped kill Grandpa. Anger surged through me. Not loud anger, cold anger, the kind that settles into your bones. Ryan wasn't protecting his son. He was using him, just as Richard Whitmore had used everyone around him. I leaned forward. Listen carefully. Lauren nodded. From this moment on, you tell Ryan nothing. I won't. You answer none of his questions. I won't. You don't meet him. I won't. If he calls, I'll tell you. I looked directly into her eyes. No. She frowned. You call the police. Before she could answer, we heard small footsteps on the stairs. Ethan appeared wearing dinosaur pajamas. He looked worried. Grandma. Yes, sweetheart. I couldn't sleep. He walked into the kitchen and climbed into my lap like he had when he was 5. He looked at his mother, then back at me. I heard Mom crying. I kissed the top of his head. It's going to be okay. He studied my face carefully. No. He shook his head. It isn't. Children often know the truth before adults admit it. He wrapped his small arms around my neck. Then he whispered something so quietly only I could hear. Dad came yesterday. I froze. Lauren looked confused. What? Ethan repeated himself. He came yesterday after school. Lauren's eyes widened. No, he didn't. Yes. He waited outside the playground. The room fell silent. What did he say? I asked gently. Ethan looked frightened. He told me, he swallowed hard, that if Grandma asked questions, I should tell her Grandpa hid money. I felt Lauren stiffen beside me. Did he say anything else? Ethan nodded. He said not to trust anyone wearing a silver bracelet. Natalie. Ryan already knew she had contacted us. He wasn't just searching anymore. He was trying to isolate us from the one person who knew the truth. As I held my grandson close, one terrifying realization settled over me. Ryan wasn't reacting to our investigation. He was staying one step ahead of it. I didn't sleep that night. Ryan knew about Natalie. He knew she wore the silver bracelet. He knew Ethan was young enough to manipulate. That meant one thing. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was watching us. The next morning, before anyone else woke up, I called Patricia. She answered immediately. "You heard from Samuel?" "Yes." There was a long pause. "I was afraid of that. I think we're running out of time." "I agree." "What do we do?" Patricia lowered her voice. "We stop reacting." "What does that mean?" "It means we make them react to us." I frowned. "Explain." "There is only one thing Whitmore's people still don't have. The original evidence." "Exactly. They believe it's hidden somewhere." "It is." My heartbeat quickened. "You know where?" "No." "You don't?" "If I knew, Thomas would have told me to retrieve it after his death." That sounded like Thomas. He never trusted one person with everything. "He divided information." "Yes." "So no single betrayal could destroy the truth?" "Exactly," Patricia continued. "But I think I know where he expected someone to look." "Where?" "The lake." I immediately remembered the calendar. Lake Anna, repeated appointments, secret meetings, private, Rebecca, Natalie. Everything pointed there. 3 hours later, Natalie, Patricia, and I were driving toward Lake Anna. I didn't tell Lauren, not because I wanted to exclude her, because if Ryan questioned her, she couldn't reveal what she didn't know. The drive felt strangely peaceful. Blue water stretched beyond the trees. Families were fishing from small docks. Children laughed. It looked like the last place where dangerous secrets could hide. Patricia directed us toward an old marina. "It used to belong to one of Thomas's clients." The building looked abandoned. Weathered wood, broken windows, faded signs. Yet something about it felt familiar. I suddenly remembered bringing Thomas here once, nearly 20 years earlier. He had insisted on stopping for coffee after meeting a client. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, I wondered whether he had been meeting Rebecca. We entered the empty office. Dust covered almost everything. Natalie slowly walked toward an old bulletin board. "My mother brought me here. When I was little." "What did she say?" Natalie smiled sadly. "She told me this was where good people kept promises." Those words echoed through my mind. Good people kept promises. Thomas had. Rebecca had. Now it was our turn. Patricia examined an old desk. Most drawers were empty. One remained locked. She looked at me. Thomas hated locked drawers. I smiled despite everything. "You're right." He always hid the key nearby. We searched quietly, under shelves, inside flower pots, behind picture frames. Nothing. Then Natalie walked toward a faded map hanging on the wall. She tilted it slightly. Something small dropped onto the floor. A brass key. Patricia laughed softly. "That sounds exactly like Thomas." The key fit perfectly. Inside the drawer lay only one object, an old tackle box. I opened it carefully. Fishing hooks, bobbers, rusty pliers. Nothing important. Or so I thought. Natalie lifted the removable tray. Beneath it rested a folded waterproof envelope. Nobody moved. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was another letter. Thomas's handwriting. Megan, if you've reached this place, then you've already learned more than I hoped you would ever need to know. First, I'm sorry. Second, never trust appearances. The evidence is not here. It never was. This place exists for another reason. Continue reading. I turned the page. Rebecca always believed fear would eventually force someone to betray us. She was right. If you're reading this, someone already has. Do not blame them too quickly. Fear makes ordinary people do extraordinary things. I thought about Lauren. Tears blurred my vision. Thomas had understood her long before any of us did. The final page contained only one sentence. Find the man who fixes old clocks. No name, no address, nothing else. Patricia frowned. Old clocks. Natalie looked equally confused. I've never heard my mother mention that. Neither had I. We searched the envelope again. Empty. Only the letter. Then Patricia suddenly snapped her fingers. Wait. What? There was someone. Who? Samuel. The mechanic. No. She shook her head. A different Samuel. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. Thomas sometimes visited an elderly clockmaker. Where? I don't know. What was his name? I can't remember. Frustration spread across all our faces. After all this, another clue, another mystery. Then Natalie's phone rang. Unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again and again. 5 times. Finally, she answered. Hello. Silence. Then a man's voice, calm, confident. Even from where I sat, I could hear him. You're looking in the wrong place. Natalie froze. Who is this? I knew your mother. Patricia motioned for Natalie to keep him talking. I don't believe you. You should. The voice chuckled softly. Thomas always underestimated how patient we could be. Every hair on my arm stood up. Whitmore, or someone working for him. Natalie asked, What do you want? I want to save you time. How? The evidence you're searching for. A pause. Burned years ago. I reached for the phone. Natalie handed it to me. This is Megan Morgan. Another pause. I've been expecting your call. Who are you? You'll know soon enough. I know my husband was murdered. Silence. Then laughter. Not loud. Not angry. Cold. You still think this is about your husband? My grip tightened. It isn't. No. What is it about? The voice answered immediately. It's about what Thomas refused to give back. The call disconnected. None of us moved. Finally, Patricia whispered, They're nervous. How do you know? They called us. She was right. For months, we had chased shadows. Now the shadows were chasing us. As we walked back toward the parking lot, I noticed something unusual. Fresh tire tracks. 2 vehicles. Parked only minutes earlier. Watching. Waiting. I slowly turned toward the trees. Nothing. Just silence. Then Natalie grabbed my arm. Megan! What? She pointed toward my car. Something white rested beneath the windshield wiper. An envelope? No stamp. No address. Only one handwritten sentence. You have until sunrise to stop looking. I picked up the envelope with both hands. No fingerprints. No return address. Just one sentence. You have until sunrise to stop looking. I looked around the parking lot. The marina was silent. The vehicles that had left the tire tracks were gone. Whoever had followed us wanted us to know they had been there. It wasn't just a threat. It was a message. We can reach you whenever we want. Patricia carefully slipped the envelope into a plastic evidence sleeve she carried in her purse. They're getting desperate. Natalie looked toward the trees. Or confident. I wasn't sure which frightened me more. On the drive back, none of us spoke for nearly 30 minutes. Finally, Patricia broke the silence. Thomas always planned several moves ahead. I know. So ask yourself one question. What if he expected someone to threaten Megan? She looked directly at me. What would he have done? I stared through the windshield. Thomas never reacted emotionally. He prepared. He anticipated. He created backups. Suddenly, I remembered something so ordinary I had forgotten it for almost a year. An old grandfather clock. It stood in our hallway since the day we married. Thomas wound it every Sunday afternoon. Nobody else ever touched it. I almost laughed. Old clocks. Patricia smiled immediately. What? The letter? Find the man who fixes old clocks. She nodded slowly. You think Thomas wasn't talking about a person? I think he was talking about a clock. Natalie leaned forward from the back seat. The grandfather clock. Yes. For the first time all day, I felt hope. We reached my house just before sunset. Lauren opened the front door before I even climbed the steps. She looked terrified. Where have you been? I'll explain later. No. She grabbed my arm. Someone was here. Every instinct inside me sharpened. Who? I don't know. What happened? I came home from the grocery store. She pointed toward Thomas's office. And the window was open. I ran inside. The office looked untouched. Books remained on the shelves. Desk unchanged. Drawers closed. Too neat. Much too neat. Someone had searched carefully, professionally, without leaving obvious signs. Natalie stepped beside me. They've been here? I know. Then Ethan appeared in the doorway. His face was pale. Grandma. What is it? I saw him. Who? The man. What man? The one who was looking in Grandpa's window. My heartbeat accelerated. What did he look like? He wore a blue jacket. Anything else? A baseball cap. My stomach sank. Too common, too ordinary. Exactly the kind of appearance someone would choose if they wanted to disappear. Did you see his face? Ethan nodded slowly. I think so. Would you recognize him again? Yes. Before I could ask another question, the telephone rang. Not my cell phone. The old landline. Nobody called that number anymore. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Slow, steady. Finally, the same calm voice I had heard earlier. You ignored my warning. I tightened my grip. What do you want? You've already found the letter. So you're watching my house? No. A pause. I don't need to. My skin crawled. What does that mean? It means someone inside your house tells us everything. Every person in the room froze. I slowly looked at Lauren, then Natalie, then Patricia. The voice continued. You still don't understand Thomas. What about him? He trusted too many people. I forced myself to stay calm. You murdered him. Another pause. Then the voice laughed softly. I didn't say that. The line went dead. I remained perfectly still. Nobody spoke. Finally, Lauren whispered, Do you think he's lying? I honestly didn't know. Maybe there really was another leak. Or maybe he simply wanted us to turn against one another. Thomas himself had written, "Never trust appearances." I took a deep breath. No more accusations. Everyone looked at me. That's exactly what they want. Patricia nodded. She's right. We verify everything. Together. No one argued. That night, we searched the grandfather clock. At first, we found nothing. We removed the pendulum, opened the back panel, checked beneath the weights. It's empty. Natalie looked disappointed. Maybe we misunderstood. No. I shook my head. Thomas never wasted words. I wound the clock exactly as Thomas always had. 1 turn, 2, 3. On the 4th turn. Click. A faint metallic sound echoed inside the case. Patricia immediately knelt beside it. Did you hear that? I nodded. There was another compartment, hidden. We carefully removed the lower wooden base. Behind it rested a narrow steel box, locked. Inside lay several items: an old pocket watch, 3 cassette tapes, a sealed envelope, and a small brass key with a paper tag. Written in Thomas's handwriting. Cabin. Natalie gasped. The lake cabin. Patricia looked shocked. I forgot about it. What cabin? Thomas rented it years ago. Where? Near the north shore of Lake Anna. I opened the envelope. Another handwritten note. Megan, if you have reached this point, then you have chosen courage over comfort. I wish I had been there to tell you everything myself. The key opens the cabin. Do not go alone. The tapes explain why. Trust Patricia. Trust Natalie. Forgive Lauren if she earns it. The truth ends at the cabin. Thomas. My eyes filled with tears. Even now, he was protecting us, planning for us, loving us. Lauren quietly covered her mouth. He forgave me. I looked at her. He hoped you would choose differently. She began crying. I will. Then Patricia picked up one of the cassette tapes. We need to hear these. I nodded. I walked to the storage closet. Somewhere I still had Thomas's old cassette player. After several minutes of searching, I found it. Dust covered the buttons. The batteries were dead. Fortunately, it also accepted a power cord. I plugged it in, inserted the first tape, pressed play, static. Then Thomas's familiar voice. If this recording is playing... He paused. Richard Whitmore has already crossed the line I prayed he never would. My heart pounded. Thomas continued. The evidence isn't just financial. Another pause. It contains the name of the person who cut my brake line. No one breathed. Thomas's voice filled the room. Steady, calm, exactly as it had been throughout our marriage. The evidence isn't just financial. It contains the name of the person who cut my brake line. My hands trembled around the cassette player. Thomas continued. If you're hearing this recording, I was right. Someone close to Richard Whitmore decided my death was easier than the truth. He paused for several seconds. The man who physically damaged my vehicle is not Richard Whitmore. I felt every person in the room lean closer. He was hired. Paid. Disposable. Another pause. His name is Daniel Mercer. None of us recognized the name. Thomas continued. Mercer worked security contracts for Whitmore Development under another company. He believes nobody knows who he is. He's wrong. Patricia grabbed a notebook. She immediately wrote down the name. Daniel Mercer. Thomas's voice remained calm. The documents proving everything are inside the lake cabin. Not hidden in the cabin. Inside the cabin. The recording ended with static. I stared at the player. Inside the cabin. Patricia repeated the words slowly. Not hidden in. Inside! Natalie frowned. What does that mean? No one answered, because none of us knew. Within an hour, we were back in the car. This time, Lauren insisted on coming. I've spent too long running. She looked directly at me. I'm done. I studied her face. She still carried guilt, still carried fear. But something had changed. She had finally stopped protecting Ryan. I nodded. You come. She quietly whispered, Thank you. Ethan stayed with Mrs. Henderson across the street. I hugged him tightly before leaving. I'll be back before morning. He looked worried. Promise? I promise. I prayed I wasn't lying. Lake Anna looked completely different at night. The roads were empty. The trees blocked most of the moonlight. Patricia directed us toward a narrow gravel road. The cabin should be another mile. When we finally saw it, I understood why Thomas had chosen the place. It stood completely alone. Old wood, stone chimney, no neighboring houses, no lights except the ones shining from our car. Lauren looked nervous. Does anyone still own it? I think Thomas renewed the lease every year. Even after Rebecca disappeared. Patricia nodded. He never abandoned anything important. I unlocked the front door with the brass key. The hinges groaned. Cold air drifted from inside. Dust covered almost every surface. It looked untouched for years. Natalie switched on a flashlight. What exactly are we looking for? I repeated Thomas's words. Inside the cabin. Not hidden. Inside. We searched slowly. Kitchen, bedrooms, closets, nothing. No documents, no safe, no secret compartments. After nearly an hour, frustration filled every room. Lauren sat down heavily. Maybe someone got here first. I refused to believe it. Thomas had planned too carefully. Then I noticed something strange. The fireplace. Every other part of the cabin showed years of dust. The stone around the fireplace looked cleaner. Much cleaner. I walked toward it. Patricia immediately followed. What is it? Someone touched this. Natalie examined the stones. Recently? No. I shook my head. Frequently. The center stone felt smoother than the others, almost polished. I pressed it. Nothing. Turned it. Nothing. Then I remembered Thomas's exact wording. Inside the cabin, not inside the fireplace. Inside. I stepped backward. Really looked. The entire chimney rose through the center of the building. The cabin had literally been built around it. Wait. Everyone looked at me. The cabin? I pointed upward. Is built around the chimney. Patricia's eyes widened. The chimney is inside the cabin. Exactly. We examined every stone more carefully. Finally, Natalie noticed a tiny brass latch hidden beneath old mortar. She pulled gently. A narrow panel swung open. Behind it rested a waterproof metal tube. No one moved. My hands shook as I removed it. Inside lay dozens of documents. Flash drives, photographs, bank records, property transfers, and one thick manila folder. Across the front, Thomas had written, Whitmore. We had found it, after almost a year. We finally had everything. Lauren began crying quietly. Patricia smiled for the first time in days. Natalie simply closed her eyes. My mother was right. I opened the folder. The first document showed dozens of fake property purchases targeting elderly homeowners. The next linked shell companies to Whitmore Development. Another listed illegal payments. Then, a photograph. Daniel Mercer, standing beside Richard Whitmore. Another photograph. Ryan, meeting both men outside a restaurant. Lauren gasped. "No!" She stared at the picture. I never knew. I believed her. Then I reached the final envelope. Across the front, Thomas had written, "If I die." Inside rested a signed affidavit. Thomas had documented everything, every meeting, every threat, every suspicious event leading up to his death. Near the end, one paragraph caught my attention. "If Daniel Mercer carries out Whitmore's orders, he will not act alone. Someone inside Whitmore Development will coordinate every movement." I turned the page. The coordinator's name appeared immediately beneath. Vice President of Operations, the same executive Samuel Reed had identified. Everything matched. Every clue, every witness, every recording. We finally possessed enough evidence to destroy them. Then Lauren suddenly whispered, "Did anyone lock the front door?" Silence. None of us had. A floorboard creaked. Not upstairs. Behind us. We all turned at the same time. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Then another. Then another. 3 men, faces hidden. One spoke calmly. "You've caused a lot of trouble." Patricia stepped in front of Natalie. I instinctively shielded Lauren. The man smiled. "Mrs. Morgan." His voice, the same voice from the telephone. "You should have accepted the warning." I held the folder tightly. "You're too late." He laughed. "No." He slowly pulled a handgun from beneath his jacket. "I arrived exactly on time." Every muscle in my body froze. The second man walked toward us. He reached for the folder. Before he could touch it, another voice echoed from outside. "Federal agents." The cabin exploded into chaos. Men shouted. Flashlights scattered. One of the intruders ran toward the back door. Another dove through a window. Gunfire shattered the silence. I dropped behind the stone fireplace with Lauren and Natalie. Patricia pulled me lower. "Stay down." More shouting, more footsteps. Then silence. Complete silence. Several seconds later, someone knocked loudly. "Mrs. Morgan?" "This is the FBI." No one moved. The words echoed through the cabin. "This is the FBI." Patricia looked at me. "Don't open the door yet." The command was calm, but firm. I understood why. The man who had called us earlier knew too much. He knew where we were. If someone could imitate a phone call, they could imitate law enforcement. The voice outside spoke again. "Mrs. Morgan, my name is Special Agent David Morales. We know you're inside. We also know you're armed with evidence." Patricia whispered, "Ask for identification." I raised my voice. "Slide your badge under the door." There was a brief pause, then a leather badge wallet appeared beneath the gap. Patricia picked it up. She examined it carefully. "It looks real." I've seen enough forged credentials to stay cautious." Another voice came from outside. "Patricia Collins." My heart skipped. The agent knew her name. "We've been trying to reach you since yesterday." Patricia frowned. "How does he know me?" The agent answered before anyone asked, "Because Thomas Morgan gave us your name 11 months ago." Silence. Every person inside the cabin stared at Patricia. She slowly unlocked the door. 3 FBI agents entered with weapons lowered. None wore tactical masks. None rushed toward us. The oldest introduced himself. Special Agent David Morales. He showed his credentials again. We've been investigating Whitmore development for almost 2 years. I looked at him. Then why weren't we told? He sighed. Because we couldn't prove who inside Whitmore's organization was leaking information. Natalie folded her arms. So you watched people die instead? His expression hardened. No. We watched every legal avenue collapse because witnesses disappeared? Nobody answered. The truth hurt, but it also sounded believable. Morales looked toward the folder in my hands. May I hesitated, then handed it over. He quickly flipped through several pages. His face changed immediately. This, he looked at another agent, is what we've been missing. The younger agent carefully placed every document into evidence bags. Morales turned back toward me. Mrs. Morgan, your husband just solved our case. Tears filled my eyes. Thomas had known, even after death. He had finished what he started. Then another agent approached. Sir? What is it? We found tire tracks. Fresh, very? Morales nodded once. They're still nearby. He turned toward us. We need to leave immediately. Outside, the night felt unnaturally quiet. The FBI divided us between 2 SUVs. I climbed into the first vehicle with Natalie. Lauren rode with Patricia. Morales remained in constant radio contact. Halfway down the gravel road, every radio erupted at once. Vehicle approaching. High speed. No headlights. Morales immediately shouted, Everybody brace. A black pickup truck exploded out of the darkness. It slammed directly into the last FBI vehicle. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The SUV spun across the road. Our driver accelerated. Gunfire echoed behind us. I instinctively grabbed Natalie's hand. She squeezed mine so tightly our fingers hurt. Morales shouted through the radio. Do not stop! Another voice answered. They're heading north. Then, static, complete silence. I twisted around in my seat. The second FBI SUV had disappeared behind the trees. What happened? No one answered. 10 minutes later, we reached the highway. Only then did Morales finally speak. They're gone. Gone? They escaped. I closed my eyes. Richard Whitmore's people had just attacked federal agents. They weren't desperate anymore. They were cornered, and cornered people made dangerous decisions. Just before dawn, we arrived at the federal field office. It wasn't large, just a secure building outside Richmond. Morales led us into a conference room. Coffee waited on the table. No one touched it. He placed Thomas's documents in front of us. We've already confirmed several account numbers. He looked directly at me. They're authentic. Patricia finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. What about Daniel Mercer? Morales nodded. We've been looking for him. For how long? 8 months? Natalie looked surprised. You already knew his name. Only from financial records. He pointed toward Thomas's affidavit. This is the first direct witness statement connecting Mercer to the murder. Lauren suddenly spoke. I know where Ryan is. Everyone turned toward her. She looked terrified. He has a hunting cabin. Another cabin. She nodded. He always said nobody would ever find it. Morales leaned forward. Where? I've never been there. My heart sank. But, she swallowed, I know how to find it. The room became completely silent. Lauren explained that Ryan never carried the address. Instead, he always used an old paper map. One location was circled with a blue marker. No name, no street, just a hand-drawn symbol. I thought it was for fishing. What changed your mind? Lauren lowered her eyes. Last week? He packed food, medicine, cash. He said if everything fell apart, that cabin would save us. Morales looked toward another agent. Prepare a search team. Then he turned back toward Lauren. Can you lead us there? She hesitated. If Ryan sees me? He won't, Morales answered confidently. We'll protect you. Lauren slowly nodded. I'll do it. I reached across the table and held her hand. For the first time in months, she didn't pull away. As sunrise approached, Morales received another phone call. His face darkened immediately. What? He stood. When? He ended the call without another word. What happened? I asked. He looked directly at me. The hospital. What hospital? The one where Samuel Reed was admitted after last night's collision. Cold spread through my body. Is he alive? Morales remained silent for several seconds. Then he answered quietly. No. Samuel Reed had survived Thomas. He had survived his own guilt. He had finally decided to tell the truth. And now, he was dead. Morales looked around the room. This officially became more than a financial investigation. He closed Thomas's folder. We're hunting murderers. Samuel Reed's death changed everything. Until that morning, I believed we were uncovering an old crime. Now I understood something much darker. The people responsible weren't hiding in the past. They were still making decisions, still eliminating witnesses, still convinced they could outrun the truth. I looked at Agent Morales. How long before they find Ryan? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he spread a large map across the conference table. Lauren pointed toward a small wooded area north of Lake Anna. He always folded the map here. She tapped one location with trembling fingers. I think that's it. Morales studied the terrain. Only one road. Heavy forest. Perfect place to disappear. He looked at another agent. Deploy everyone. Then he turned back to us. You stay here. I immediately shook my head. No. Mrs. Morgan, my husband died because of these people. I know. They've hunted my family. I know. They killed Samuel. I know. I looked directly into his eyes. I'm not waiting here. For several seconds, he simply studied me. Then he sighed. I can't officially approve that. But I also know your husband left clues only you understood. Patricia smiled faintly. That's the closest thing to permission you'll get. Less than an hour later, we were driving toward the forest. FBI vehicles surrounded us. The road narrowed until only one SUV could pass at a time. Then Morales raised his fist. Everyone stopped. Ahead, hidden between tall pine trees, stood a weathered hunting cabin. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was inside. Morales quietly organized his agents. 2 moved behind the cabin. 2 circled toward the woods. Another pair watched the road. He looked at me. Stay behind us. I nodded. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. Then, the front door opened. Ryan stepped outside. He looked exhausted, unshaven. His clothes were dirty. For one brief second, our eyes met. Shock crossed his face, then fear. He immediately reached inside his jacket. Gun! Agents shouted. Ryan froze. Slowly, he raised both hands. I surrender. No one moved. Morales approached carefully. Step forward. Ryan obeyed. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. It was over. Or so I believed. Then another gunshot echoed from inside the cabin. Everyone turned. A second man burst through the back door. Daniel Mercer. The man Thomas had named. He fired twice toward the woods. Agents returned fire. Mercer ran, straight into the trees. Morales shouted, "After him!" Several agents disappeared into the forest. The silence afterward felt unbearable. Ryan looked at me. I never wanted this. I stared at him. My husband trusted you. I know. You used my daughter. I know. You lied to Ethan. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I expected anger. Instead, he looked broken, not innocent. Broken. Then he whispered something I never expected. I didn't know they were going to kill him. Every sound around me disappeared. What? I swear. You helped them. I thought. He shook his head violently. I thought they only wanted the trust. I stepped closer. You knew they sabotaged the brakes. No, I found out afterward. My voice became cold. And you stayed silent. They said Lauren would be arrested. There it was again. Fear. The same weapon Whitmore had used against everyone. It explained Ryan. It didn't excuse him. You chose yourself. He lowered his head. Yes. Before I could say another word, shouting erupted deeper inside the forest. Another gunshot. Then another. Morales ran toward the noise. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the radio crackled. Suspect down. No celebration, no cheering, only silence. Daniel Mercer had died during the pursuit. The man who physically cut Thomas's brake line would never stand trial. Part of me hated that. Another part felt strangely empty. 3 months later. The courtroom overflowed with reporters. Richard Whitmore sat only 20 feet away. For the first time since Thomas's funeral, I looked directly into his eyes. He no longer appeared powerful, only tired. Evidence covered nearly every table: Thomas's recordings, financial records, the affidavit, the photographs, Samuel Reed's statement. Ryan eventually agreed to testify. His testimony confirmed how Whitmore's organization manipulated employees through fear and blackmail. Lauren testified too. She admitted every mistake she had made, every lie, every photograph she had sent. She accepted responsibility without asking for sympathy. Natalie testified about her mother, about Rebecca, about 25 years spent hiding. When my turn came, I carried only one thing: Thomas's final letter. I read it aloud. The courtroom remained completely silent. When I finished, even the judge needed a moment before speaking. Weeks later, the verdict arrived. Richard Whitmore was convicted on multiple federal charges, including conspiracy fraud, witness intimidation, and murder-related offenses. Several executives followed him into prison. Justice had taken almost a year, but it had finally arrived. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Healing never works that way. Lauren attended counseling. She slowly rebuilt Ethan's trust. Ryan accepted a lengthy prison sentence after cooperating with investigators. Natalie moved back to Virginia. Not because she wanted to remember the past, because she no longer had to run from it. Patricia finally retired for real. She joked that Thomas had assigned her one final impossible case. I laughed. He probably had. As for me, every Sunday afternoon, I still wound the old grandfather clock, just as Thomas always had. Not because I believed he would walk through the front door again, because every quiet tick reminded me that truth can wait, but it never disappears. One evening, Ethan sat beside me, watching the clock swing back and forth. "Grandma?" "Yes." "Did Grandpa know we'd find everything?" I smiled. I think he hoped we would. Ethan looked up at Thomas's photograph hanging above the fireplace. "I miss him." "So do I." He rested his head against my shoulder. "Do you think he'd be proud?" I looked around the room. Lauren laughing softly in the kitchen. Natalie helping set the table. Patricia arguing with Ethan about a board game. A family that had nearly been destroyed, yet somehow survived. I looked back at my grandson. Yes, I think he'd be very proud. Sometimes people ask me whether I regret opening Thomas's office that morning. Whether I wish I had ignored Ethan when he whispered, "Grandma, someone slept in Grandpa's office." My answer is always the same. No. Because that frightened little whisper uncovered lies, exposed murder, brought justice to people who believed they were untouchable, and finally gave my husband the ending he deserved. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. If you had been in my place, would you have forgiven Lauren after everything she did? Or would the betrayal have been too much to overcome? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one of them because your stories and perspectives remind us that none of us faces life's hardest moments alone. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next true-to-life family story. This journey taught me something I will never forget. The people who betray us are not always evil. Sometimes they are simply afraid. Fear can convince ordinary people to make terrible choices, but every choice still carries consequences. I also learned that truth may be delayed, but it is rarely defeated. Lies demand constant protection, while the truth only asks for patience. Most importantly, love is not measured by the years we spend with someone. It is measured by the legacy they leave behind. Thomas left us courage, integrity, and the reminder that doing the right thing is worth the cost, even when we may never see the outcome ourselves. If this story leaves you with one message, let it be this: never let fear decide your character. Because when everything else is taken away, your integrity is the one thing no one can steal.